White fog era. The white mist is coming. Please, survivors, please be careful and remember not to go out. Repeat, the white mist is coming. Please, survivors. Over Linhai City, two drones flew slowly and leisurely over the ruins of a city that had long been shrouded in white fog. It was unclear whether the cold mechanical sound could be transmitted to the city below that seemed to be isolated from the world. Suddenly, several black shadows flashed past under the cover of thick fog. The two drones were dismantled in an instant. The cold mechanical sound suddenly stopped, and the area returned to silence. As one of the most prosperous areas in China, at this time, the entire area was as quiet as a no-man's land. The high-rise buildings had long since been moved to the ground, and the rubble had become part of the earth. Unmanned cars were placed haphazardly on the streets. Dark red bloodstains could be seen everywhere on the walls that had not yet collapsed. However, there was not a single corpse on the entire street. Through the white mist, one could still look up and see the tall tower that had already tilted. All of this seemed extremely strange under the white mist, and it was so quiet that it was alarming. For months have passed since the day of the disaster. In fact, humans don't know when the disaster occurred. Maybe it started long before they discovered it. However, they didn't come back to their senses until the first human city was shrouded in white mist. Countless ferocious-looking monsters suddenly appeared from the strange white mist, sweeping across all places where living creatures lived like evil ghosts from hell. They are tens of meters high, like giant monsters that came out of the Ultraman special series, and there are also small beasts that are like locusts that kill endlessly. Faced with these almost endless unknown creatures, the land occupied by humans is rapidly falling. Many small countries may even become a no-man's land overnight. Counting from the day when the first human city fell, the 4 months since have been called the White Mist Era by the World Military Coalition based on the United Nations. Of course, these things have nothing to do with the survivors trapped on this island. As an important economic town and military base in the Chinese waters, this small island entered a state of war preparation within just 1 month after the disaster broke out. Countless supports entered the city, but even so, after the white fog descended on the city, most of them had no time to evacuate. The ordinary citizens who were concentrated in the protection could only hear the sound of gunfire for several weeks, mixed with the trembling of the earth and the roar of beasts. Everything fell silent. The underground shelter was breached, and even the very few people who escaped from the shelter never saw the shadow of the army again. This island has long lost contact with the outside world. Even the drones that come once a day only let the survivors here know that the government is still there. In a suburb far away from the city, Zhang Fan gently opened the door of the small building, looked at the white, foggy sky, couldn't help but sigh, shook his head, closed the door, and went back. After the white fog falls, there are few days when you can see the sun. There is not much water left in the storage. It will last for another 2 days at most. Zhang Fan frowned as he looked at the few small bottles of water left in the warehouse. He was not a native of the city. He happened to be transferred here just because of his work. However, within a few weeks of working, a catastrophe occurred and white fog descended. Immediately afterwards, the island was blocked, so he was trapped here. After struggling to survive in the first few weeks, with good luck, he successfully escaped from the city and found a small village with no trace of human beings. He found a small building to live in and scrounged some food and water left in the village into the house. He also spent some time sealing all the doors and windows with wooden boards and even carried a polished woodcutter with him at all times. But even so, he lived in fear every night. He escaped all the way from the city. Compared to other suburban survivors who didn't even understand what the disaster was about, he had a clearer definition of the severity of the disaster. Those monsters that suddenly appear in the white mist, like monsters in horror movies, cannot be stopped by human power. The supplies in the nearby village have basically been plundered. The water in the small river outside the village has long been undrinkable. If you want water, maybe you have to go to the city. Zhang Fan looked at the tourist map on the table. There were many marks on it that only he could understand. Among them, except for some places that were too far away. Only the city area might still have food, water, and other supplies. Looking at the large area circled with a red marker in the center of the picture, Zhang Fan frowned. The water will last until noon tomorrow at most. If we go to the edge of the city, even if we don't rest on the way, it will take nearly 2 hours. Taking into account various situations that may be encountered on the way, it is estimated that a round trip will take 5 or 6 hours. It is best to set off today. Zhang Fan exhaled and pushed away the quilt. The window was sealed tightly, and he looked out at the vast white field outside and said to himself, although it is white fog today, it is much lighter than before. In comparison, it is much safer. There is no other way. Instead of waiting for death here, it is better to go out and give it a try. Making up his mind, Zhang Fan immediately went to the cellar downstairs to sort out the things he needed to bring with him when going out. A fairly sturdy mountaineering bag, the hatchet that he sharpened to a shine, and the QSC-95 semi-automatic pistol he picked up in the urban area. The name and code name of the firearm have been slightly changed in this article to distinguish it from reality. These are the things he relies on to dare to go out. Secondly, he must bring 2 bottles of water and enough compressed food for 3 days. These things are enough for him to survive outside for a period of time. Zhang Fan put food, water, and other things into his backpack, tied the hatchet to his waist, and finally picked up the pistol and wiped it gently, his hands shaking slightly. This gun was found from the body of a female soldier when he was escaping in the city. Although there were only 4 bullets left, it was his biggest reliance at this time. With the gun in his hand, Zhang Fan was not only a little nervous, but even a little excited. After all, in peaceful times, how could an ordinary citizen like him hold a gun? Now that he has a loaded pistol in his hand, it is impossible not to be nervous or excited. If we leave now, we should be able to reach the city before night. Putting the gun away carefully, Zhang Fan picked up his hiking bag and walked out of the house. After blocking the door, he carefully placed several animal traps in the grass outside the house. Although these arrangements cannot stop those monsters, they can also have some effect on some people with evil intentions. Holding the map in his hand, Zhang Fan took a deep breath, calmed down his mood, bit the bullet, and got into the thick white fog. Chapter 2. Return to the city. In a basement on the edge of Linhai City, 4 or 5 survivors huddled in this palm-sized place. Everyone sat quietly on the ground. In the center, a tall man took out food and water from a small pile of resources and distributed them to several people. Here, the strong man finished dividing the small pile of food, clapped his hands, and said, "That's it, everyone, I think." Brother Hu, at this time, the woman who received a small portion of food at the end was stunned for a moment, pointed to a petite girl in the corner next to her, and said weakly, "La Mon hasn't gotten the food yet." The strong man known as Brother Tiger glanced at her impatiently. The woman was startled and subconsciously shrank back, her hands trembling slightly. "Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you." The woman lowered her head in fear, and the little girl next to her also moved to the corner in fear. "Yes, this is what I want to talk about today." Brother Hu snorted coldly and glanced at everyone. "Everyone, as you can see, we don't have much food and water. The supplies in nearby residential areas have basically been looted. Now you should all know how difficult it is to find food and water. So, I think," as he said, he looked at the girl in the corner who did not dare to look up and said coldly, "I think that from today on, we should not waste resources on things that are useless like that." Everyone seemed to have known the news for a long time, and they were silent. The girl just shrank in the corner, burying her hair and shaking. Only the woman's face changed, and she subconsciously shouted, "How can that be done?" "Huh." Brother Hu glanced at her coldly. The woman was startled. She reacted suddenly, and her face changed. "Who?" "Brother Hu, I mean, this little sister is only 10 years old. We should take care of her." "Guan Xinxin, are you going to give her food and water?" Brother Hu said, and the woman was immediately speechless. "You are kind-hearted. You raise her, but I can't afford it anyway." After saying that, He ignored them and sat down with the other survivors to eat silently. Unconsciously, the other survivors moved silently away from the two of them. Guan Xinxin was stunned for a moment, but she still didn't say anything. She looked at the girl next to her, who was trembling with her head buried in fear, or something else. She couldn't help but sigh, tore off a small piece of bread and handed it over, saying, "Little sister, can you eat some first?" The girl shook her head vigorously. Guan Xinxin sighed and said nothing. "That's right. You may have to go farther to search for supplies today. Everyone has to go there today." We're almost in the city. Zhang Fan climbed up a hillside, looked at the city buildings in the distance that were vaguely visible in the white mist, and exhaled a breath. I don't know whether he was lucky or for some other reason, but he didn't encounter any danger at all. The white mist creatures that used to appear in groups in the past could not even see their shadows today. Although Zhang Fan was confused about this, he didn't think about it deeply. He just thought he was lucky. Looking at the city not far away, Zhang Fan first put the gun he had been holding on his waist, took the hatchet in his hand, and then continued to move forward. Near the city, there are more white mist creatures. Although it is only on the edge of the city, the sound of gunfire will also attract a large group of locust-like monsters. Therefore, here, cold weapons have an advantage. Carefully touching it before getting close to the city, Zhang Fan saw through the white fog several black shadows flashing across the street in the distance. Next to a facade, there was a creature that looked like a dog, but was huge in size, dragging a corpse. He had seen many of these creatures before when he escaped from the city, even in the suburbs. They looked similar to large dogs, but their hair was as black as ink. They were huge, and their eyes were strange scarlet red. They often appeared in groups of 3 or 5, moved extremely fast, and their strength and bite force were much greater than normal large dogs. There was also that annoying sense of smell. So, Zhang Fan saw that guy from a distance and immediately walked away. There are indeed more monsters in the city, but why do I feel that compared to the past few months, these monsters are much less common? Zhang Fan carefully walked around the alley, frowning slightly. If there are fewer monsters in the suburbs, it can also be explained that everyone has come to the city. But why are there so few monsters in the city? It's impossible to go all the way to the central area, right? Zhang Fan thought about it for a while, but he didn't have a clue, so he just ignored it. Even if there is really something wrong with these monsters, it is beyond his control. His goal now is just to survive and then find a chance to find a way to return to the mainland. When he thought of his family members far away in the mainland, he couldn't help but feel a little melancholy. There shouldn't be any trouble over there on the mainland, right? Hurry, those things haven't noticed us, hurry in. At this moment, a very low voice came from the front. Zhang Fan was stunned and saw a few black shadows flashing at the end of the alley, as if several people were rushing over. Because Zhang Fan stayed in a dark alley, they didn't notice him, and he didn't want to attract their attention. In this environment, humans may not be more trustworthy than those white mist creatures. Zhang Fan waited silently in the alley for a while. After he was sure that they had left, he emerged from the alley. The target he chose was a medium-sized shopping mall. Shopping malls of this size were very common in Linhai City, which was once a shopping paradise. He knew that those famous large shopping malls must have been emptied out by the survivors immediately, and small shops and residential buildings, which were less dangerous and convenient targets, were probably all touched down. It was estimated that only small shopping malls like this could still have some supplies left. He lay down in the rubble next to him and carefully looked at the mall entrance for a while. After making sure that there was no danger, he rushed over and gently pushed open the tempered glass door that, although it was broken into pieces, it still didn't fall down. The lobby on the first floor of the shopping mall used to be a place for selling clothes. At this time, it was in a mess. Clothing racks and various brand-name clothes were littered on the ground. The dismantled mannequins looked like dismantled corpses and were randomly discarded in the dried blood like broken rag dolls. There is still a strong smell of blood in the air, but apart from the blood stains, not even a corpse can be seen. Zhang Fan frowned, resisting the discomfort at the smell of blood, and walked towards the stairwell. If I remember correctly, the food area should be on the second. Hiss! There was a sound of tearing flesh and blood. Zhang Fan's scalp tightened. He immediately stopped and subconsciously raised the hatchet in his hand. Not far away, in a corner filled with debris, a dog-shaped monster as tall as a person put aside the dead body beside its mouth and slowly raised its head to look at him. Chapter 3. Seriously injured and dying. Roar. The black dog threw away the dead body it was munching on, roared, and rushed toward Zhang Fan like a hungry wolf. This guy must have been huddled in the corner, eating alone from the beginning, so there were no other white mist creatures nearby. When he heard its roar, Zhang Fan's expression changed, and he was almost more anxious than it was, and he rushed forward with a knife. When escaping from the city, he often dealt with such creatures. The most dangerous time was when he was blocked by 3 black dogs on a small building. In the end, an unfortunate survivor happened to pass by and attracted them away, and he was saved. But precisely because of these experiences, he also has some experience in dealing with this most common white mist creature. Although the black dog in front of you looks very ferocious and terrifying, its attack method is very simple: just pounce and bite. It is generally inflexible, like a preset machine. As long as you can bypass the front of it and attack the eye of the opponent's neck from the side, it can be fatal. The big black dog's hind legs were very powerful. It pounced hard, and its huge body rushed toward Zhang Fan like a big net. But at the moment when it was about to land, Zhang Fan turned slightly sideways, and the black dog's claws brushed past him. While the black dog was still on the ground, before he could stabilize his position, Zhang Fan used all his strength and stabbed the opponent's weak spot with the knife in both hands. In an instant, a dark red, smelly liquid spurted out. Even though Zhang Fan had expected this situation earlier, he did not dodge in a hurry and was splashed all over. Clean and sharp, this style of fighting was exactly what he had learned from more than 10 fights with black dogs. He shook off the animal blood stained on his sleeves with some disgust, resisted the urge to vomit, and took off the coat stained with animal blood. Even though he was used to the smell of blood in the air, and it was not the first time he had killed such a monster, it was still hard for him to get used to it. Fortunately, this place used to be a clothing district, so it's not difficult to find a clean and well-fitting coat. Although there is still some bloody smell, it has become very light, basically not much different from the bloody smell on the street. Just as he picked up the hatchet again and was about to go upstairs, suddenly, there was a sudden noise on the street outside the mall. Fuck. Hurry, run. Tiger, brother Tiger, I can't run anymore. Zhang Fan was startled and looked outside the shopping mall. Through the glass doors and windows, he saw 2 men and a young woman on the street not far away, running through the ruins in a panic. Not far behind them, 3 or 4 black dogs were approaching quickly, like hungry wolves. Judging from the current situation, in half a minute at most, these 4 people would be buried in the dog's belly. Zhang Fan's expression changed, and he quickly hid behind a nearby shelf, pulled out his pistol, and stared outside nervously. Damn it, don't run here. The 4 people in front of me were clearly the survivors of Brother, Hu, and his group. Just now, they had originally set their sights on a large shopping mall that still had some surplus goods, but they never expected that there were more than 10 black dogs hidden there. Facing a monster of this size, this group of survivors were caught off guard and torn into pieces. After a few people, they got into a mess and quickly ran away. Brother Tiger turned back and glanced at the 3-headed black dog and Guan Xinxin, who were approaching quickly. A trace of cruelty flashed in his eyes, and he suddenly hooked a steel bar-like thing in the ruins next to him. Guan Xinxin behind him was not paying attention, and his foot was suddenly tripped. Suddenly, Guan Xinxin's feet were unstable, and she fell directly to the ground. Dash! Guan Xinxin was in pain, but she immediately reacted and wanted to get up. But behind her, the nearest black dog was almost behind her. After Brother, who finished all this, he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Her corpse should be able to survive for a short period of time. Help! Help! The black dog behind her suddenly rushed towards her. In its bloody mouth, there was even a layer of black blood on the sharp teeth like knives. The smell of blood was mixed with a stench of rotten flesh, which was disgusting. Guan Xinxin looked at the mouth that was rapidly expanding, like a bottomless devil's cave. Her delicate body couldn't help but tremble, but her whole body seemed to be frozen, and she couldn't exert any strength. She sat on the spot, as if she was petrified. Completion. Bang. A large pool of black animal blood exploded from the black dog's neck. Its huge body swayed slightly due to the sudden attack and passed by Guan Xinxin. At this time, Zhang Fan, who had already leaned out, patted his head with some annoyance and said to himself, "Damn it, I still can't hold it back." Outside the street, Guan Xinxin had not yet come to her senses, but the other two black dogs seemed to be startled by the sudden gunfire and paused on the spot, looking for the source of the attack as vigilantly as humans. Brother Hu and the other man, although they also heard the gunfire, ran away without looking back. "What are you doing standing still? Run!" Seeing Guan Xinxin still stunned, Zhang Fan was furious and shouted angrily. Guan Xinxin woke up suddenly, got up quickly, and then ran towards him. "Damn it! Don't run towards me. Keep running forward." The two black dogs also spotted Zhang Fan, bared their teeth, and rushed over after Guan Xinxin. "Damn it!" Zhang Fan's expression changed, and he hurriedly raised his gun, aiming at the two black dogs behind Guan Xinxin. To be honest, this was his first time using a firearm. It was unrealistic to say how accurate it was. He was able to hit just now only because of good luck, but also because the black dog happened to be floating in the air and could not move. His hands were still trembling slightly from the recoil of the previous shot. Looking at the two rapidly moving black dogs, which looked like two black mosaics, Zhang Fan's scalp felt numb. At this time, Guan Xinxin had already run into the shopping mall. Seeing the monster getting closer and closer, Zhang Fan gritted his teeth and pulled the trigger suddenly. Suddenly, there was a gunshot, and the bullet flew out, passed through the glass, but only rubbed the opponent's body, leaving only a blood mark on the rough and thick skin of the black dog. 2 rounds left. Zhang Fan couldn't help but panic. The two black dogs seemed to be angered by the bullets. They gave up on Guan Xinxin and turned to look at him. "Get behind me!" Seeing Guan Xinxin running over, Zhang Fan frowned and yelled at the frightened girl. The girl also knew that it was not easy to disturb her at this time, so she hurriedly ran behind him. Bang! Another bullet was fired. This one finally hit the black dog at the front, but it only hit the opponent's front leg. The bullet was embedded in the flesh and blood. The black dog fell in pain at the door of the mall, but the one beside it bypassed it and rushed toward Zhang Fan, who was very close at hand. Although Zhang Fan was not frightened, he inserted the pistol into his waist and used the hatchet that was still shaking from the recoil. He was about to deal with it like he had dealt with the previous black dogs. But suddenly, the black dog raised its claws and lifted up a huge stone slab in the ruins, like a wall, and fell towards the opponent. Zhang Fan reacted quickly and jumped to the side, but as soon as he jumped out of the place where the stone slab fell, the black dog behind him quickly followed up and bit Zhang Fan's calf in midair. Ah! Zhang Fan felt as if his entire leg lost consciousness at that moment. Then, the pain of torn flesh and blood rushed to his brain, and he unconsciously slashed back with a knife. Pat! The sharp blade scratched the black dog's skin, but that was all. The enraged black dog raised its head, and a large piece of meat was torn off Zhang Fan's calf in an instant. The whole person was thrown out like a rag doll, flew nearly 10 meters away, and landed heavily on the ground. Several bones in his body were broken. Roar! The black dog shook its stabbed head, glared at Zhang Fan, who was lying on the ground and howling in pain, and pounced on him. The survival instinct of living things is always extremely strong, not to mention that Zhang Fan has not completely lost his mind. When he saw the monster rushing toward him, he endured the severe pain, raised his still mobile right hand, and stabbed forward suddenly, Click. The blade pierced into the black dog's rock-hard muscle as if it had touched bone, and there was a feeling of metal collision. The angry black dog bit him down, and Zhang Fan's left shoulder seemed to have been hit hard by a hammer. The bones were shattered, and the flesh and blood were blurred. He was still a beast after all, so he didn't attack Zhang Fan's left hand that could still fight back. His strong desire to survive prompted him to pull out the hatchet and stab the eye in its neck. Black blood spurted out, and although his whole body was in great pain, Zhang Fan slowly fell down as if he was relieved. Fine. Hiss! At this moment, there was a sound of grinding teeth, and Zhang Fan was shocked. Only then did he realize that the lame black dog was crawling towards him step by step, dragging a long bloody trail. Damn it, is he actually going to die in such agony? Looking at the monster that slowly opened its mouth, Zhang Fan forgot about the pain for a moment, and his mind went blank. Bang! The last bullet in the pistol was fired, hitting the weak point of the black dog. Looking at the blood flower blooming like a dark red flower, and Guan Xinxin holding the gun in both hands next to him, her delicate body couldn't help but tremble. Zhang Fan let out a filthy breath. His mind became blurry, and he slowly closed his eyes. It really hurts. Chapter 4. Do I have superpowers? It hurts. It really hurts. As if in a dream, Zhang Fan seemed to see a person who looked very similar to himself, with horrific wounds all over his body, a shattered left shoulder, a large piece of missing meat, a bloody calf, and almost deformed bones. But this was clearly what he saw, but he felt it all on his own body, and he could not vent the pain by shouting. Slowly, the pain from the wound lessened, but the blood all over the body seemed to suddenly boil. The swelling of the blood vessels was almost stronger than the pain caused by any trauma. The discomfort from the inside out was not only as simple as severe pain, but also the itching feeling like thousands of ants crawling in one's muscles. However, he still could only endure it silently, still unable to speak out, as if he was an outsider who was just suffering. Gradually, he adapted to the pain and fell into a coma amidst the discomfort of extreme swelling. Are you awake? On the second floor of the shopping mall, Guan Xinxin, who was sitting on the ground counting the food and water collected, suddenly noticed that Zhang Fan, who was lying on the ground, moved slightly. She immediately got up and asked cautiously. Zhang Fan opened his eyes blankly, looking at the gray ceiling and the peaceful face full of concern. His mind was filled with confusion. What happened? Where am I now? Wait, I think I was attacked by a black dog. Yes, that's right. I almost died. Recalling what had just happened, Zhang Fan was shocked and sat up suddenly. Guan Xinxin, who was standing beside him, was startled and shrank to the side. In today's environment, without sufficient medicine and any treatment methods, you can basically wait to die if you suffer such an injury. Where's my injury? Just when Zhang Fan was panicking, he suddenly froze and then looked at his body in disbelief. The shattered left shoulder, the bloody calf, and the deformed bones, these seemed to have never appeared before. Every part of his body was in good condition. Even some of the previous scars had disappeared. Everything that happened just now seemed like a dream, except for the clothes he was wearing now that were so torn that they couldn't be seen at all. What happened? How long has it been? Zhang Fan suddenly turned his head and asked Guan Xinxin, who was shivering at the side. The girl seemed to be frightened by his expression. She was stunned for a moment and stammered. I don't know. I'm sorry, I really don't know. You just passed out. I carried you to the second floor, and then your wounds suddenly started to heal, and very quickly, it only took an hour, but you were unconscious for a long time, and it should be almost sunset now. Wounds heal quickly? Zhang Fan patted his left shoulder with a confused expression. Very solid, no issues at all. Could it be possible that he has some superpower? Why hasn't it been discovered before? Zhang Fan frowned, thought for a while, and finally exhaled slowly, and simply stopped thinking about it. This era is already absurd enough. So, what if the wounds can heal automatically? Can there be ridiculous white mist? Even if there is really something wrong with his body, it is not something that he can solve temporarily. Besides, having such an ability should be a good thing. Thinking about it this way, Zhang Fan could see it. At this time, he realized that Guan Xinxin seemed to be afraid of him. She won't treat me as a monster, right? Zhang Fan couldn't help but smile bitterly. Although this girl's reaction was a little slow and her brain was not very bright, she still had some conscience as she knew how to take her to the second floor to rest. Therefore, Zhang Fan had a good impression of her. However, as an introverted otaku who has never been in a relationship in 4 years of college, and even tried his best to avoid contact with girls, it is really a problem to face this beautiful girl who looks like she is only in her 20s. Hello, my name is Zhang Fan. Thank you just now. Zhang Fan tried his best to maintain a friendly smile and stretched out his hand. Guan Xinxin looked at him and finally stretched out her small hand weakly and shook his hand. Guan Xinxin. The little girl seemed a little nervous. No, it was you who saved me just now. I saved you once, and you saved my life, so we help each other. Zhang Fan smiled and applied a little force to his hand. It was so soft. Are all pretty girls' little hands so soft? Seeing the strange smile forced on Zhang Fan's face, the little girl nodded unnaturally.